Hi everyone, today we'll be going over how to set up your development environment for your projects. So this involves installing the VSCode IDE, setting up Git and GitHub for version control, installing Conda for virtual environments and dependency management, and installing PyTorch. And these first three steps aren't just for machine learning projects, it's a pretty typical setup for any software engineering project, so the good news is that once you have this stuff set up, you can use it throughout the rest of your career. So during this video, I'm going to be just going through these docs that I've typed up in the workshops repository of the YML GitHub. And these docs are designed to be, very readable for beginners. So much like onboarding documentation that you might have if you're starting a new internship or a new job. So definitely feel free to read through them at your own pace. So first up is the Integrated Development Environment, or the IDE. We'll be using VS Code or Visual Studio Code, and we can install that from Microsoft's website right here. So depending on your OS, you'll be able to select the one that you need and install the stable build for that. And once you have installed, it'll look something like this. And let me actually do a split view so it's easier to see. But we have a couple useful VS Code extensions here to install as well. So you can go into this tab right here, extensions. And for example, you can search each of these. So you have Python there, you can have PyLance, and just go through and install each of these extensions. And you'll kind of see what each of them does. You can read through them here, but they're all pretty useful as you're developing. And then additionally to the extensions, we also have these useful settings. So here on Mac, I go to Code, Preferences, Settings, and you can, on PC or Windows, it'll be pretty similar as well. So the first one here is to trim trailing white space. So I'll just search for trim, and then I have it enabled already, but you'll want to enable that as well. Just make it a little cleaner when you're writing your code. And then this other one is preview mode. You can read about it and see if you want to have it on. I actually keep preview mode on, but you can disable it if you want to. And then here's some hotkeys that are just useful. You'll kind of, as you're using VS Code, you'll learn them and you'll kind of just commit these in muscle memory. So, it'll help you search for files, things like that, pretty quickly. Cool. Okay, so that is VS Code. Pretty straightforward to set up. The next thing on our list is version control. So version control is what allows you to track all of the changes that are happening to a code base over time. So that way you can see all the changes between versions and revert to an old version if something breaks. There's a key difference between Git and GitHub. So GitHub is like Google Drive. It's the cloud-based hosting service that stores all the different files and lets you work on them collaboratively. Git is the tool that tracks that version history and all those changes. Kind of like the underlying magic that makes Google Drive work. So the first thing to do is install Git from the Git website. So you can install that here. So I'm on Mac OS, so I would click this guy. So for Mac, actually, if they give you a command here, brew install Git, and anytime you see a command with a $sign, I kind of talk about this in the docs, but you can basically go to your terminal. So you can command space to search, and you can search for terminal, and that'll open up this guy. And then on Windows, you can also open your, I think it's called PowerShell or something. I'm not too well versed in Windows, but you can load up your terminal as well there, and then run these commands in there. So for Mac, you also need Homebrew, just in case you don't have it. So if you run this command, you get an error, you can go here to that link. So they have that link right here, install Homebrew, and then you go here, copy this command, paste it here, and then press enter. I already have Homebrew, so I'm going to just clear that out, but you'd press enter and it would install that for you. Cool. So once you have Git set up, you can set your user.name and user.email for your global thing on your computer. And all these commands, again, they're prefixed with the $sign, so you don't actually type the $sign. That's what's right here in your terminal. You can kind of see it right there. Let me make it a little bigger. That didn't really help. But anyways, you can just paste these commands in there. So you can check, git config global user.name. So I already have mine set up, so it'll just print out my name. And if I did it from an email, it'll print it out as well. So you can set those using that config command there. Cool. So next up, and actually you want to make sure, that your email that you're using is the email that's associated with your GitHub account. That way the local Git that's on your computer knows when you push stuff to GitHub that it's associated with your account. Otherwise, it'll just show a random kind of general name not associated to account. So you want to track all that to your account. So just use the email that you signed up to GitHub with. Cool. And then next is authenticating. which you can do either via SSH or via HTTPS. I use SSH, but if you have trouble setting up SSH, feel free to use HTTPS. It's pretty simple in that regard. But basically, once you have Git set up on your machine, you want to be able to authenticate every time you push a change that they know it's really you submitting these changes. So what you'll do, you can pretty much just follow the docs. I'm not going to go into it too much in this video, but you can just read through it and set up your SSH key through here. I have all the links and everything for you. The one thing I will show is how to actually add this snippet of code into your SSH file. So basically what it's saying is if you don't already have this file, you want to create it. So even if you have it, don't have it, you could type in this command touch. So if the file doesn't exist, it'll create it for you. If it doesn't, it'll just update the timestamp for the last time it was accessed and edited. So we'll do touch, and I already have this file like set up for my computer, so I'm not going to do it in this file, but you would type in this config name. I'm just going to type something called like temp config. So I'll touch that. That just created that file. And then if you want to add this portion of the text into your config file, you can do that in your terminal by typing in vim for vim, and then you'll type in the file name. So again, I'm using temp config because I'm just using a random file, but you would type in vim this guy, and then press enter, and it'll open this kind of funky looking editor. Right now it's blank because there's nothing in this file, so you just open this file to edit it in your terminal. So the first thing you'll do is press I for insert mode, and you can see at the bottom here it says insert. And then now what you can do is you can copy and paste this guy. So I'll copy it and then paste it into my terminal. Looks good. If you didn't use the ed algorithm for setting up your SSH key, so if you didn't use this command and you used this command, RSA, you would change this from ed to RSA. But if you did it with ed, you'll just do it as it is right here. And then to save it, it's a little weird with Vim. You first press escape. So you'll press escape, and then you'll press :WQ for write quit. Press enter, and that just saved that change. That's how you can open it in your terminal, paste those lines, and then get out of Vim. Cool, so once you have that, you can basically have your SSH config file set up. You can add, the last thing you need to do is just add your SSH key to your GitHub account. So to do that, you basically go to your GitHub profile. You can do that for mine. Go into your settings. And then when you go into your settings, you have this thing called SSH and GPG keys. You can click that guy, and you have all your SSH keys. You would press add a new SSH key. So I have a couple from like research and like work and stuff. So you can just add a new one, and then I would call it something like, just so you know, it's like your personal computer, like Faya's MacBook or personal computer or whatever you want to call it. And then you would paste the contents of your public SSH key in this command right here, the pb copy or clip for Windows or cat for Linux. This will copy it into your clipboard, so you can just press Control-V to paste it in there. For Linux, you'd have to copy it from the terminal. But cool, okay, once you have that, you've basically set up your GitHub. And again, if SSH is not working for you, feel free to use HTTPS and it'll work just as fine. SSH is just something, I've seen a little bit more in industry, but again, it doesn't really matter too much which one you use, just use whatever works. But once you have that set up, you can clone your project repository. So to try and understand what's actually happening here, we can think about let's go to our Yale Machine Learning kind of like organization, and then if you just click any of these repos, so again, if we click like the exoplanet candidate classification or Van Gogh fire, the chest diagnosis or tweet sentiment classification, these are all repositories that exist in our cloud kind of environment here. So for example, this workshops repository, it exists in the GitHub cloud. So if I want to, and again, remember that GitHub it's just like Google Drive, right? This is all the stuff that we can see collaboratively. But unlike Google Drive, we can't really edit our code directly on GitHub. We need to, take the version of the repo that's in the GitHub cloud and make a copy of it locally on our individual computers. So this process is called cloning a repository, and that's why the command is going to be, if we scroll down here, the command for that is going to be git clone. So what you need to do is basically, and basically what the cloning process does is that it'll take an exact copy of your repo at the time that you called git clone and make a copy of it onto your computer. So once you have that copy, you can work on it just like any other code files on your computer. But one thing to keep in mind is that the changes that you're making are all local to your computer. So if you want to push those back up to GitHub, you would use the git push command. We'll look at this in more detail in a bit. But for now, let me clone this onto my computer. So I have, let me go to the parent page for this workshops. And then what I'm going to do is I'll first, on your computer, you kind of need to decide where do you want your code to kind of live. So in my case, this squiggly sign means I'm in like the root or the kind of parent of my user. So I'll just make a directory, mkdir, and I'll call it yml. Keep it straightforward. Then I'll switch into that cd yml, change directory into yml. And then now you can see I'm in this yml directory. If I do ls, which lists all the files here, there's nothing in here because I just made this directory. But what I will do now is I'll do git clone, and then here in this green code button, I'll click that, and you have the option of HTTPS, SSH, or GitHub CLI. So you either set it up with HTTPS or SSH. Since I have SSH, I'll copy it with the SSH option. Otherwise, you'll do the HTTPS URL, and then you'll take that and Control-V, paste that into your terminal, and then press enter, and it will clone this workshop. So now if I press ls, I can see, well, this repository workshops, this guy right here, I just made a copy of it in my local machine. So if I do cd into that, cd workshops, and press ls, you can see, yep, I have the two files. This repository only has two files right now. It just has license and readme.markdown, and it has all of that stuff there. And if I cat readme.markdown, you can see this is actually the exact file that is right here on the left that you can see here. So we know, okay, that worked out great. Cool, so once you have that, you have your local repo up and running, and you'll be ready to move on to setting up the virtual environment that you'll be coding in soon.